Welcome to this week's Rob's Country. We're going to be having a look at Peter Yeeland's operation. We've got a commercial DVD that we're going to show you because it's interesting, but that's now the standard of marketing if you are wanting to market your operation. And I'm saying that because he was last year's winner of the South Island Farmer of the Year. And I don't want to psych you out, and I don't want you to start thinking that you're not up to it, because you will be. However, it's just a wee look at last year's winner of the South Island Farmer of the Year, and I'm suggesting that if you know anybody who'd make a very, very good entrant, put their hand up for them and get hold of Lincoln University Foundation, and let's have another great one, because it is a very, very prestigious award. Anyway, that's one story. Another story we're going to be looking at is the updating of the veggies with the veggie season with Robin Oakley. But first of all, I guess we're coming in animal health-wise to the area of lambing, and you start thinking about all sorts of problems, including bearings. Are we still having problems with that? We did when I was a child, it seemed, as a young shepherd. Bearings was a problem.
So bearings, we still have issues with bearings, and I think maybe they are a little bit more common on the flats where we are, because there seems to be some anecdotal feeling amongst professionals as well as farmers that perhaps animals that seem to rear their pregnancies on hill country and are a bit fitter seem to be less prone to bearing. So perhaps the pelvic muscle strength or whatever happens when you're wandering up and down hill and dale may have something to do with it.
It's basically the vagina's coming out, isn't it?
Absolutely. So to put it in perspective, you're right. It's the vaginal wall that protrudes outwards. So it's a problem primarily seen before lambing. Can happen in cows as well, but much less likely. So it's primarily a ewe problem, and seems to occur sort of later during the pregnancy. And we think what happens is when we have part of the pregnancy or uterus pushing into the pelvic canal, it causes just a strain reflex. And so the animal strains and strains, and if that straining occurs prior to birth actually being ready and the cervix is still tightly closed, then what happens is the animal the abdominal pressure pushes the vagina inside out, if you like, so the inside of the vagina pops outwards. So yeah, it is a problem, and it's a real nuisance to manage, actually. My very good colleague up in Hawke's Bay, Richard Hilson, a veterinarian up there, embarked on a massive retrospective study looking at the causes of these prolapses and whether there was any distinct link between some management practices. Perhaps there was a bit of an idea that how short the tail was docked might have had some influence on whether a ewe would be more prone to prolapse, as well as the environment the animal was reared on. We've just mentioned plains, flatlands versus hill country. And although these anecdotal sort of feelings still exist, unfortunately there was just very little conclusively come out of it. And there were thousands of farmers questioned and thousands returned. So
yeah, in my mind, for some reason, I'm thinking overweight ewes, but it could have been that the ones that we had on the farm were overweight or what, I don't know.
That was another issue, that perhaps a lot of intrapelvic fat and maybe a lot of less muscle tone both contributed to this issue. But again, we just simply don't know. So it remains problematic.
Treatment, because we used to use a plasticky thing, wash it all down, push it back in and boof and tie it onto the wall.
That's right. We still use those. Bearing retainers, they're called. They're great. They don't work all the time. It becomes problematic. It's a real headache for small acre block holders because they're looking at the damn thing all the time. As soon as they lamb, it's the best thing that can happen. These bearing retainers, people worry about ewes lambing through them. They lamb through them fine. They just flip up the other way. As you say, they're kind of they're a sort of triangular shaped device, and there's a big wide bit that pushes into the vagina against the cervix and holds the vagina in place, and then there's some strings on the T's on the outside that you tie tightly to the wool. And then
lamb shearing's a bother.
Yeah. And then if they lamb, the retainer flips inside out and they lamb through it absolutely fine. There's various other contraptions all over the world. In Britain, I remember seeing these hugely complicated harnesses that you'd put on that actually prevented the ewe from arching its back and straining. There's a number of operations that have been devised that seem to work, but of course the costs involved in doing so are just make it ridiculous. Some expensive cows or things that are prone to vaginal prolapse, we sometimes do these procedures on. But yeah, it just remains a problem, and it's something to be aware of. It's this time of year where we see abnormal things protruding from the back end of animals, and of course this is one of them, and particularly important if it's occurring if you've got what appears to be a pink protrusion from the back end of a ewe or cow perhaps, when it's definitely before it's due to give birth, then that's one of the things that it could likely be.
If you don't want to touch it, ring your vet. What about further in?
Uterine prolapses, of course this usually occurs in conjunction with giving birth. It's often associated with metabolic problems, calcium problems, low levels of calcium. So in cows we often see this when we have low calcium or milk fever in conjunction. Can happen in ewes as well. It should be seen as an emergency. It's something that we don't want to muck around with. The calving bed or the birthing bed, the uterus itself pops inside out. Excuse the description, but it kind of looks like, pink mushrooms, if you like. You have these placentomes, these caruncles on the uterus where the placenta sort of interdigitates with these nobules. So it looks kind of a strange organ when it's inside out. But unless it's put back in, particularly in cows, you're going to lose the breeding worth of that animal quite readily if we get major damage to the uterus, and potentially very quickly these animals go into shock and we're left with a dead animal. So definitely an emergency, both as a welfare concern and also to retain breeding worth and future reproductive ability in some of these animals.
People are off their dinners already, so let's carry on with this sort of thing. Fetal membranes being retained. Again,
another thing that we see abnormally hanging out the back of these animals. So as you can imagine, as a normal part of the birth process, the placenta being expelled and got rid of is a normal part of the birth process, and we call it the third stage of birth, is actually getting rid of the fetal membranes. And there can be occasions when these fetal membranes, the afterbirth if you like, isn't evacuated properly. And that doesn't necessarily have to be a major panic or concern. So for instance in cows, generally we would say if these things are hanging around for more than sort of 4 or 5 days after birth, then maybe we should have a look at it. Again with sheep, about the same sort of scenario.
And you can tell that it hasn't disappeared. Because
yeah, they're hanging out. They're they're literally membranes hanging out of the back of the animal. Horses, of course, it's an emergency, and actually if they're still there 12 hours after birth, we need to get involved very quickly. So those of you that are foaling any mares, it's a totally different scenario, and retained fetal membranes in a mare is a genuine emergency very quickly, and we need to attend to that very urgently.
Of course, then you've got the dead fetus, that blood poisoning and God knows what.
That's right. So often we do see retained membranes with dead animals, because sometimes the calf or foal or lamb has died before it's ready, and that's actually why the membranes haven't been expelled, because the fetus has been expelled too early, and as far as the body's concerned, the membranes still should be there. So that can be an issue. Anyone who's got anything to do with emergency inductions of birth, so having to have medical reasons to make sure that the birth process is completed too early, well then that also is a major cause of these retained afterbirths and afterbirths that hang on.
There's a lot to it, isn't there?
There is, yeah.
Thank you very much indeed. Well, after the break, we're going to show you the way that Peter Yeelan's vineyard and winery, or family company, whatever he likes to call it, presents itself to the world. It really is a follow-up, pushing very hard for our South Island Farmer of the Year contest. Welcome back to Rob's Country. Funnily enough, the guy that was just on screen with me looking over a whole lot of wonderful landscape is Peter Yeelan's. This is his story as his PR people tell it.
Hi, I'm Peter Yeelans, a local lad from Marlborough. I started work in my father's grocery store when I left school. I moved on shearing sheep, fencing, doing a bit of local government civil engineering works. Then I went mussel farming and deer farming. All of these led me to a day back in the early 90s when I came out here to Seaview looking for hay for my deer. I'd lived in Marlborough all my life, I'm a third generation lad, and I never even knew Seaview existed. But I fell in love with it on the spot as soon as I came over the brow, and since that day I can honestly say I've never looked back.
It's really, really special. I never knew how special it was when I first came here, but it's proven to be really significant in producing exceptional quality wines. So what we've got here is a real mixed bag of terroir. We've got very loessy soils full of minerality that oozes in the wines, sodium and magnesium, potassium. It really, really makes it distinctive. And that's because this piece of land has all been upthrusted over time. It's right in the middle of a fault line. And, you know, we're surrounded by some really special features. We've got the Arwitry River just on the northern side of us that provides us with water. Behind us as a backdrop, we've got Mount Tapiwainuku, and we've got Cape Campbell, the northernmost peninsula of the South Island, right out here.
We use RTK GPS technology to get the vineyard rows nice and straight. Now this unique terroir is really, really proving itself. We have an ideal grape growing climate of hot days and cool nights under crystal clear skies, and it really works. I've always believed that you should put more in than you take out. Our state-of-the-art carbon zero winery is the most sustainable in the world, and my goal is to keep it that way by continually measuring and offsetting our greenhouse gas emissions. Having our tanks in a fully insulated building contributes to us being 4 times more efficient than the industry average. We use dried grape prunings as a renewable fuel source, eliminating nearly 200 tonnes of greenhouse gases every year. We make our own compost. We make it from grape marc from the winery, waste bark from the sawmills, mussels and seaweed. We put in a bit of lime, lots of love, and also a bit of sweat. We're experimenting with different animals to help keep the grass down. That saves on diesel when you don't have to mow it. It also cuts down on chemical spraying. We're developing a breeding program for baby doll sheep so we can use them all over the vineyard. We recycle byproducts and choose recycled packaging material wherever possible. It's all designed for our team to work efficiently and effectively, crafting beautiful award-winning wines. We use the very latest technology to streamline every step of the process so that we can put the very best quality wine into each and every bottle we sell. It's all about positive energy and harmony, values. It's more than a vineyard, it's a way of life and a home. We know that we're in partnership with nature. It's a conversation, and we're always listening very carefully.
I believe the wetlands are very integral to a good viticulture farming operation, no matter what you do. Here I've developed 25 plus little wetlands, and essentially, you know, they have multiple purposes. They're good to look at, they're good for the bird life, they're good for water retention, water control. You can't really be without them on a vineyard of this scale. I love having birds around, and I developed a love of birds when I was farming deer down in the Marlborough Sounds. And here we're trying to really bring in birds that aren't normally here. So I've planted hundreds of thousands of flaxes and native shrubs, all trying to encourage tuis and bellbirds back into here.
Good afternoon, welcome to Yealands.
It's not just the place, it's the people. Tamara, our winemaker, and Gareth, our viticulturist, are an exceptionally experienced and skilled pair at the heart of the Yealands team.
And it's been a big surprise for me because I sort of thought perhaps all the vineyard being in the same relative area, I was expecting there to be quite a similar style coming from the Seaview vineyard, being quite herbal, quite mineral, cooler climate. We're a lot cooler here than the Wairau area or some of the other sub-regions within Marlborough. But there's such a range of flavours. It's really been exciting.
Although it's one of the, if it's not the coolest, it's probably the second coolest growing area of Marlborough. But I think that definitely works into our favour quite a lot. We get that extended growing time, more time for the flavours to come in.
Yes.
And I think that gives us a little bit of an advantage.
Definitely. Longer, cooler growing season, fantastic for flavour development. Flavours that Marlborough Sauvignon Blanc is really known for.
But we always knew we had something special here. The vineyard's just taken a few years to develop, and now it's getting some maturity, and I guess we are as a team as well, and looking after the place and seeing what it can produce. The winery being central to the vineyard is just amazing. Tamara's right there to get out and come out with me. We spend a considerable amount of time together out in the block. Every day we're out, for at least an hour or two, if not more. And that is something that most places probably don't have. And I think we're very, very lucky to have it, but it's also a key ingredient in what's making this place so successful.
We have such a unique site here, and the flavours are something that really develop in the vineyard, the terroir here. It happens naturally. So to just carry that through into the wines, nurture it, is really respectful of the place, I think. We were recognised with the biggest wine show in the world out of London. And to win the best Sauvignon Blanc in the world was a huge accolade and a testament to the place. To have Seaview recognised in that show, in such a prestigious show, was huge for us. In fact, we're standing right here in the block that won that award. We made a wine that represented just one little parcel, so we called it a single block wine. And I chose this block because it had such amazing elegance to it. It was Sauvignon, but yet it was very restrained. Lovely texture and just this real purity of flavour, beautiful, beautiful minerality. So to have that recognition was huge for us here and huge for the team. But the fact that everything is so different, it's really inspiring to sort of see, because I never thought that we could have parcels side by side within the same vineyard that could be different. And the blending process is heaps of fun, because we have, sometimes when we go to blend our Sauvignon, we have up to 120 parcels of Sauvignon, which are now 120 tanks in the winery that we then go and look to blend. So we should have that beautiful, quite intense nose there, black currant and almost a bit tropical. A little bit of lychee.
It's got a good nose. Making good wine starts with good country, good land. That'll grow good grapes. If you've got good grapes, then the winemakers can do the final tuning and make it into a terrific wine, and that all happens here.
The wine industry is just great. Everywhere you look, there's something new and exciting to work on. There's a lifetime of opportunities right here. I feel very, very lucky, and I'm really proud of what we have achieved.
We've got a terrific product here at Seaview and Marlborough. We've got a world-class team, winery. We know how to make good Sauvignon Blanc. We've proved it. We're doing it in a sustainable fashion. We have got an enormous future going forward.
So my philosophy in a nutshell is think boldly, tread lightly, and never say it can't be done.
And I would suggest that Peter's suggestion there of a jolly good idea is that you do have a go at the South Island Farmer of the Year. After the break, we'll be talking to Jim Grierson about similar subjects, I'm very, very sure. Welcome back to Rob's Country. Do I dare ask you about that snow? It's not good, mate.
It's not good. Out on the field the last couple of days, noise has been blowing, but it's been cold. The reason why it's been cold, it's been blown off a refrigerator.
Yeah.
And we need to get the temperature up a little bit and get rid of that snow and get that pressure down in terms of frost risk. We have had a few frosts. We've had some areas that have been damaged by frost, especially in the early viticultural varietals such as Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, throughout the South Island. But it's not major, but it has been some damage. But look, we're getting quite a bit of cloud, wispy cloud during the day now too, which is a good sign that although it's northerly and although it has been cool to date, it actually prevents frost. So we've just gone over probably quite a large moon for the month, so hopefully we're into a warmer period during the evening or early morning. But I mean, who knows, Rob?
Yeah, well, exactly.
The opportunity for it to go from hot extreme to extremely cold and clear a lot less while that wispy cloud's about. So let's hope it continues for at least another 3 or 4 weeks.
Yeah, exactly, because it's just all money and expense and risk and
without a doubt.
scary.
Yep. Yes,
Okay.
very scary.
Rest of the season, are we getting dry again?
We are. We've had a few little bits of rain over the last fortnight, but that we've needed them. The top sort of 50 millimetres of soil is pretty dry. Plants are starting to show some sign of that. Growers have got to get their irrigation regimes right up to speed because it's going to get dry pretty quickly, I do believe. In fact, I think it's showing all those signs for that to happen. Interesting enough, with the weather we're actually having a bit of mixed bag. The fungicide pressure is the fungus pressure is quite high. So get those fungicides on, just the normal protectant ones. Get them on and keep them ahead of the program. You only need 2 or 3 of them, and no matter what the crop is, just to make sure you've got a cover there for at least 7 to 10 days. The other thing we are starting to find is the odd mite coming up out of the trash and trees and bushes, not so much in vines. There's been quite a sign of leaf roller out there, so that they get into the young tissue in the bud that's already there. So yeah, there's the odd insecticide needs to be looked at. Found the very, very few extremely low thresholds of aphid. I think it's too early for any damage as such, but you know, the little devils are out there, so we need to be pretty vigilant over the next 3 to 4 weeks of all of those things. Sounds a heck of a lot, but it's a crucial time of the growing season. And in fact, the next month makes the season for growers, no matter what crop they're growing throughout New Zealand. So interesting times. But the other things that I have noticed in just of recent days have been the emergence of some of our harder to kill weeds if we don't get onto them early. And I'm talking about Californian thistles, mallow, wireweed, to a greater degree, the amaranthus is starting to come through. Now these are, interesting enough, soil temperatures haven't been too bad and they're coming through a little earlier, but the actual season in terms of growth stages is probably about 7 to 10 days behind. Now, don't ask me about that. Tide comes in one way and it goes out another, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does a bit.
But I actually think, if my bones tell me correctly, I actually think we're into what we could probably describe as almost a normal Canterbury New Zealand spring, and that we do get variable weather. But if you have a look at our history over the last 25 odd years, you'll find that where the growth stages are for apples or stone fruit or grapes or whatever,
Throughout the country.
about what they used to be when we had a lot more settled weather. Where we've had these extremes of the last recent years, and of course we remember them, but I think we're back to what we can actually say, Rob, in confidence, that maybe it's a normal year.
Whatever normal
I mean,
is.
it's post-election, so maybe the whole world's come normal. I don't know.
I love the way that Neil would say a normal season, you know, the climate will be slightly warmer than normal. So, yeah, whatever normal is.
I mean...
It'd be nice if it settled down, wouldn't it?
It would be nice, and it probably never will. But I mean, if you're having temperatures of around that 16 degrees during the day, we're not getting the 25s one day and 8s the next day, and I think that's what I like about it. The variance isn't great, and we're getting a pretty steep. And our evenings they're cool. Around 1, -1, and we had 6 hours of -3 about a week ago, and you start to see that in the leaf tissue of plants that have been affected by that chilling, but it's not death, so it's not dangerous, but it has happened. So, yeah, I think we've got a pretty even keel in terms of temperatures.
Some parts of New Zealand are still pretty wet.
Yes, they are. Yeah, I think because we're not getting the warm weather which we sometimes do experience to dry off the top. But, it only takes, even those cold nor'westers across the South Island at the moment are drying out the east coast quite quickly. But, go to the west coast, to go up to Nelson, Marlborough, or Nelson especially, they're blooming wet. And talking to some guys out of Gisborne the other day, and they said, we're quite wet actually. But of course they're getting the northerly east, coming down from the northeast, these tail end of the sort of tropical storms that they've been getting. And they're getting quite a bit of rain out of it. I mean, the country's looking quite green, which is really good. I think it's a pretty good spring, to be honest.
You've been to Australia in the last few weeks. What's happening over there?
Well, we're having interesting times over there. Their economy is different to ours. It certainly has been affected, and I mean their general economy, which makes it tough for vegetable and fruit growers because people buy far more conservatively, and there is in some areas some overproduction, especially in lettuce and cabbage and those sort of vegetables. But I still think it relates back to what happens in the marketplace and where the consumers are at. We've got too few dominant supermarkets, if I may lead into that little discussion. But I mean, the
floor is yours.
But they're restricting profitability in the grower end, and they are convincing the consumer with powerful marketing that they're getting a bargain, and neither of those two things are really happening. The growers aren't making enough money, and the consumers are paying too much. So somebody is getting profit somewhere, and it's not too hard to work out who. And I've got quite a grind on this one. At the end of the day, 2 of the supermarket chains are in New Zealand. Australia have now got 2 rogue, as they would call them, the traditional ones would call them, marketers coming into Australia, and I think that could be healthy for the consumer. And if it is, people will buy more fresh fruit and vegetables, and that's what the business is all about.
Do you know how come we get tomatoes 24/7, 365 days, and all this other produce? I mean, you don't stop making salads in the winter now.
If you remember back about 18 years ago, Rob, the first tomatoes came in from Queensland, and the first scream was, fly, and we're going to get decimated by that, and our crop's going to be wiped out, and all this sort of stuff. Yeah. That didn't happen. But what it did do, anemic as they were, they looked like tomatoes, but anemic as they were, households were able to, housewives were able to purchase those tomatoes and what we would consider to be off-season times at an economic rate. Now that's good, not good for the growers back in Queensland, but good for the consumer. Now what that actually did do, it educated 2 things. It educated the New Zealand grower to grow tomatoes in a longer season, because all of a sudden, people just don't buy tomatoes from November through to February, January. They actually have them a bit longer. They even take them into the winter. And the other thing is that it educated the consumer to go buy and want to buy tomatoes all year round. So from a negative, which was the importation, the positive is, and we've now got a tomato industry that's 12 months round the clock. And that is, you can take that for a number of other things. Broccoli, for goodness sake, comes down from Saudi Arabia. Broccoli. Down from Saudi Arabia into our shelves. And at certain little times where we can't produce enough broccoli. Annoys the hell out of 1 or 2 of the broccoli growers here, but...
Well, I've got Robin Oakley on the program.
I was going to say Robin. Oh, have you? Well, I know Robin's, and rightly so, is a bit grumpy about it. But once again, the benefit for his organisation is they're selling broccoli a lot more and growing broccoli a lot more longer.
Because you can use it for salads in the summer and use it for vegetable in the winter.
People do it for all sorts of different reasons. So even our consuming habits. Look at the ethnic cuisine we've got in New Zealand now. It's fantastic, really. It really is.
Jim, there's a big push from a lot of people now for families to start growing their own veggies again? Is that just a drop in the bucket, or is it a wee threat?
Well, it'll never be a threat. It'll be. I think it'll be great because it's going to hopefully allow our children to understand where they come from. I can assure you, by the time they're teenagers, they're not going to be interested in growing vegetables. So, but it's going to help to educate what vegetable and fruit production is about. And yes, there will be some. It's going to be a minuscule amount compared to what we actually consume. But if it makes people think about vegetables and fruit as a daily diet, 3 to 5 a day, for me, it's just a plus. It's better for everybody.
I saw the power from the main road yesterday, funnily enough, and it was the Power Community Garden, and there were rows of beans, and I thought, wow.
Yeah, and you know, there's some children and some parents of those children who don't know where those things actually originate from. And if there's anything that we could do in the red zone of Christchurch and to produce it into a pretty blooming good sort of a garden, just the education value would be fantastic, let alone the produce that will come off there.
I mean, all you got to do is keep the idiots out.
Yeah, well, that's right, and unfortunately some of them will be about. But look, the threat of a home garden growing more vegetables and fruit and flowers, no, great. It's all part of the getting ourselves sorted.
Wonderful.
Why buy cans? Let's buy the real stuff.
I can't disagree with that, Jim. Thank you very much indeed. After the break, we will be, in fact, talking with Robin Oakley. Welcome back to Rob's Country. Well, as we suggested, we just had Jim talking about horticulture, but more specifically, Robin Oakley was his view on the season.
We finally got finished all the potato harvesting in very slow style this year, and the only good thing was that the quality of the spuds that we were digging were still very good, so that was a good thing, but very, very slow.
Is that because of the wet?
All that wet we had earlier on. Some of the ground we dug quite nicely, but there was some paddocks that wasn't a good year to be in some of those paddocks, and the ground just went tight and hard and made digging very slow. Lots of dirt coming up, lots of lumps, just lumps coming up, spuds in amongst it. So that's all finished and we're on now. We've got all the first earlies in for the Goldens. Are on the way. They're probably only about a week away from coming up now, so they're all on track. And we've got our first planting in down here at Southbridge, just done last week. And we're just looking ahead now to starting the main planting a week after this, so probably by mid next week we'll get started on the main planting around the Southbridge area. And on the beetroot front, we've got all the beetroot harvested, and we've still got some of that in storage, and that's come off really, really well. Quality's very good, eating.
That's becoming quite fashionable again.
Oh, it is, and it's an amazing product. Like, there's so many different ways you can cook it and eat it, but if you're a lazy person like me, it's just throw it in the roasting dish with the other veggies, and it's absolutely delicious.
And very, very good for you. It's a health food.
Yeah, great for you. And if I've been reading up quite a bit of stuff on the internet because I like doing a bit of cycling, and there's quite a few articles out there. It's supposed to improve your endurance. It's supposed to depends on which articles you read, one thing or another, but it's supposed to help oxygenate the blood, so you're supposed to be able to perform a bit better. And there's some people out there that have actually developed these like beetroot shots, and there's a lot of top athletes that are actually having those as part of their training diet. Yeah.
Cool, so it is a health product.
Oh, yes.
What about broccoli and such?
Well, we've actually got a gap in the broccoli harvesting at the moment, which is something we try to avoid, and usually we're good at avoiding that, but all that rain we had last in the autumn from sort of early April through till later on in May, that stopped us getting on the ground and planting, which normally it takes quite a bit to get a stop, but we were still planting up in the Amberley block at that stage, and the amount of rain we had, and you just literally couldn't get on the ground. So we've got a gap in our harvesting at the moment, which will probably run for about another 4 weeks, and we finished harvesting last week, and the quality of the crop we've harvested this winter has been exceptional. Been really pleased with how that's all gone.
It's been pretty dry.
Yes, well, I was very fortunate. I missed a bit of the winter this year. It was sort of wet and horrible when I left, and when I got back, it was spring was not far around the corner, and things were starting to dry out. And we've really had very little rain, as everyone will well know, since then. I mean, we've got a cold, lousy day out there today. But
not much rain in it.
Not much rain. Yeah, you know, the single-digit rainfalls aren't contributing much, and we'll be getting to the stage, you know, coming up now. We start on our main potato planting. To be quite honest, I don't really want to see any rain because it's a disruption. Or if we're going to get a rain, let's have a couple of inches one night and have a few days off, and then let's get into it. But yeah, no, things have still been quite cold.
And as far as the prices in the supermarkets because of the supply, I mean, is that sort of a bit steady still?
Yeah, the broccoli prices were quite firm there the latter part of the winter, and there's always different things in the mix, you know, with that crop is how plentiful the supply is. I mean, we're out at the moment, but quite often through this time of the year, the other growing areas can come through with strong production, which can keep up, so that can keep the prices reasonably steady. Potato prices, they're generally pretty steady throughout the year anyway, unless there's any major interruptions from anyone for any reason, but they tend to remain pretty steady, and supplies versus the time we've got left is looking...
How's your Goldens going? You've got the babies and you've got your mediums.
Yes. No, the sales of those are going really well. There's a lot of people that have cottoned on to the fact that, you know, they are a special potato. They do taste nice, and we're getting a lot of repeat sales with those. The preference is more so in the babies in the small box, but there's still quite a steady demand here on the next size up, which we've also put in a box because we think they're a bit special, so they should be, you know, stand out.
In a box, they're in the dark, which is good.
Oh, the box is honestly the best packaging for the product. It may cost a wee bit more. But yeah, the product's guaranteed to be in the dark. It's not going to get bruised or knocked around, you know, getting to and from the store. And then when you get them home, they're a really good way to handle them in the pantry. It keeps your pantry nice and clean and tidy, and it's something you can stack. So you can stack it on something else on it. It's you know, a lot. You
did some research, didn't you?
Oh yeah, a lot of people comment on how they like buying a box potato just because of how easily it fits in the pantry or into the fridge, depending on what your preference is. Yeah.
You've been to France. What did you see over there? Because we imagine sort of peasants and croissants.
Oh well, yes, well. Definitely plenty of the croissants. I did visit quite a few boulangeries, which with all your fruit tarts and the like, and you don't hang back eating those when you're over there on a bike tour, which I was on. So I was fortunate enough to be away for quite a while there doing with a bunch of neat people that did the year 2000 Tour de France. We rode the whole trip from way to go and clocked up just over 4,000 Ks on our way around there. But over 50.
You need some carbohydrates to burn off.
So we weren't scared of eating and hydrating at the end of the day. And saw a lot of crops over there. When we were there, we only saw a handful of sunflower paddocks that were right out of full bloom just because of where we were and at the times we were there, but we saw a lot of crops that were getting close. So big areas planted over there in sunflowers, big areas planted in maize and wheat, and in some places a lot of beans as well. And big rolling country, like this huge country over there, like a lot of production.
But we don't imagine that.
Yeah, no, it's a big place. You actually stop and look at the map and look at the size of France. It is quite a big patch, and there's the big chunk of it which is an arable production. And then you got the other extremes you go to. You get down into the Pyrenees there, and you got some quite big hill climbs and quite different terrain down there. And then you get up go over the other side and get into the main Alps there, and totally different scenery again, and awesome country.
And did you get a feeling that they're going ahead with agriculture, and they're part of the EU and everything?
Yeah, everything. It's hard to tell always how well things are going. I mean, the crops and everything in the paddocks are all looking good and done very well. But at the time of the year we were there, you know, there's not a lot of activity happening in the fields. But if you can't help but look on a few sheds on the way past, and I think something about Europe, they all seem to always have plenty of modern machinery. They never seem to be short on that front.
Something to do with subsidies, Rob.
Yeah, I think it might have, yeah.
Gosh, subsidies has been a long, long time, hasn't it, since we had anything like that at all. After the break, we're talking dairying with Federated Farmers. Welcome back to Rob's Country. Vaughan, I can't talk dairying without bringing up the subject of payouts. Where are we at?
Yeah, it's not good.
No.
It's dropped. It's been a big peak and a big fall. What's caused that is the Chinese carried on buying when they actually didn't need to, which kept the price up for a lot longer than was expected. They realised that they had overpurchased, they dropped out. In the meantime, the price got so hot that we had North Africa gone, a few other places that dropped out. It was just too expensive. In the meantime, what was going on around we had a great season here as well, so we had more supply than demand. EU had actually cranked up. They're actually the largest exporter of milk nip powder now, rather than New Zealand. They've got quota restrictions coming off at the end of the year, so a lot of guys are actually front-footing it and starting to build production now. So that's gone on. In the meantime, Russia went to war with Ukraine, and the EU said you can't do that, and Russia said, well, it's off. We don't want your butter and cheese.
They're putting too much of a
Yeah, so, but their butter and what milk was going to butter and cheese, and now it's going to powder. So from being over demand, now there's oversupply. And along the way, America had a great year, cheap feed imports, and they tend to lag about 6 months behind. They're coming through and still pumping along now. So yeah, every boom has a bust, and we just found it. So
yeah, exactly.
What's going forward? The payout schedule is the company's been pretty kind and haven't slashed the advance price so much. But looking at the payout schedule, there's very little money in next winter, and that's when we could really start to feel it. So farmers need to be very pragmatic and really look at their budgets and just be careful. I know, for example, I'm herd testing tomorrow morning, and I'm looking forward to the results, because about roughly the bottom 10% of your herd only makes about 4 to 5% of your milk. So I'm afraid they'll be down the road pretty quick, and I won't have to bring in so much supplement feed. So unfortunately, that also means that I've talked to a couple of other guys. They're trying to sell silage, and they can't find a buyer.
Do you cut the cows' heads off, or are you trying to hock
Beef
them
price
off?
is pretty good right now, yeah.
You don't want to sell them to somebody else who's got that problem, but...
Well, no, if she's got a fat ass and a slack udder, she ain't doing much for me. She might as well be in the beef and go to McDonald's. So
yeah,
she'll be a happy meal.
Nothing we could say to that.
Yeah.
Where does ECAN and all that sort of thing fit in now?
Yeah, it would be really good if the legislators, specifically ECAN, can just take a bit of a pause. And they had some of their legislation revolving around EBITs. Well, our EBIT's been slashed, and if they could actually take their foot off the gas and stop or slow down the way in which they want to implement all these changes, the barns, pads, clip tanks, these sort of things, all cost a lot of money. And to be green, first of all, you need to be in black. So.
Well, it's two colours on your tie, isn't it, Vaughan?
Well, this is true.
That is excellent. No, thank you. But just take the foot off the throat a wee bit.
Yeah, it would be good. Okay. And maybe just give us bigger timelines. So,
that's all you're asking. Good.
Well,
Dairy Awards, they're looming again.
Yeah. The entrants are able to enter from the 20th of October, and they're open to share milkers and equity partners or equity farmers. Then the next tier down is the farm managers of the year, and then the dairy trainee of the year. Specifically for the share milkers and the equity partners or equity farmers, this gives a great opportunity for them to really get stuck into the business and have a look at the nuts and bolts, what they're strong and what they're weak in. Really go through those financials. And in a year like this is a great time to be doing that and finding out those weaknesses and trying to solve them. So it's a great learning event for all those involved, and a great networking opportunity too. So
it's also fairly courageous, isn't it? Because I mean, everybody wants to wallow on their strengths, but I don't want to know about what I'm not good at.
Yeah. Well, but that's probably the thing you need to know the most, and you end up being critiqued by some of the best in the business.
Yeah. Which isn't, you can't buy that sort of advice.
No, you can't. I've said before that you probably, once you enter and you win, you can't enter again. So probably you want to come second every year, because it's how you get a warrant of fitness on your business.
I love you.
Yeah.
This is great. New agreements coming out?
Yeah, we've got the new herd owning share milkers agreements out. a lot of the jargon and palaver and legal stuff has sort of been is now a lot easier to read and now easier to navigate. Of course, a lot of it's still negotiable. There's a lot of things you can work around, but the bones are there to form a really good contract, and that's what crucial to any share milking or contract milking operation is. So, contract milkers contract is available too. And that's, if anyone wants one of those, just ring 0800 Farming.
Brilliant, and it's understandable, which is fabulous.
Yeah.
Tell me about the seminars you're holding to sort of get everybody on the same page.
Yeah, we've got some seminars in late November in Ashburton coming up, and that's open to share milkers, contract milkers and farm owners who are looking to get the best out of those agreements or go into one of those agreements, rather than just going out grabbing it and just seeing how it goes, and we'll fill in the blanks as we go along. They can actually get in there and find out some of the nitty-gritty and work out what they really want out of it. Because if you get a really good contract, it's a lot easier. There's an old saying, memories fade, opinions change, but ink dries. So get it on paper.
Today's been a wonderful day for that sort of thing. Well, thank you very much indeed, and good luck for this rest of the season.
Thank you.
Federated Farmers' phone number and others that you'll be wanting to jot down are on your screen now. I'm Rob Cope-Williams. You've either been watching or you have just missed Rob's Country, but it will be back at the same time next week. Until then, bye now.